Greetings, everyone. I want to welcome you to another video in the series of Wrestling with God. I have a very special guest today. But before I introduce him, I want to put today's conversation in a context. As most of you know, I follow the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda and I practice Kriya Yoga. One of the treasures that Yogananda has opened up to me is the Bhagavad Gita. It is one of the most sacred scriptures in India, and it's a conversation between Krishna, the guru, and his disciple Arjuna. And it both takes you to the heights of spiritual realization, but also gives many practical instructions on how to integrate spirituality into your day-to-day life. What I am developing a deeper appreciation for is that the Bhagavad Gita is part of a larger literary work. It's part of what's called the Mahabharata. It's this long, epic story that, again, encompasses and is the framework for the Bhagavad Gita. And the more I learn about the Mahabharata, the better is my understanding of the Gita. So in that spirit, I want to introduce my guest, Rajeev. He is a retired physics professor from the University of Rochester, and he's also from Southwest India himself, and his family were farmers. I just find it kind of sweet that from this farming family came this physics scholar and now a burgeoning scholar of the Mahabharata and the Gita. And he was introduced to the Gita by a friend in high school from a Brahmin priestly family. And now in his retirement, he is giving himself full force to studying, meditating on the Mahabharata and the Gita. So Rajeev, it's wonderful to have you with us. Why don't you just fill out my introduction of you for a bit?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here, and we have had many conversations on this before, and I've learned a great deal from talking to you. Yeah, so I should say that my background is not particularly remarkable in any way. I'm not from a rich or powerful family, but I'm not destitute either, somewhere in the middle. My background is not particularly spiritual. As you know, there are the caste system in India, and I'm from one of the lower castes, but not at the absolute bottom either. So pretty average guy in many ways. Yeah, I got interested in physics quite early on, and it was around the time that I also got interested in spirituality. In fact, one of the people who introduced me to physics was himself from a very scholarly family, and so I had the opportunity to hear about things from him. And in fact, for a couple of years, I even considered taking that as my path, become a monk or something. I'm glad I didn't, because I would not have lasted. But I always wanted to study this. I've always wanted to dig deeper into the vast spiritual literature of India. It's enormous. It's huge. But I always wanted to learn it, but only now I have the time to do it. So I am fulfilling and.
Well, let me ask this question, because some people might find it curious that here you are, a PhD in physics, and yet you are interested in exploring your spiritual roots, specifically the Gita and the Mahabharata. What is it about the Gita and the Mahabharata that attracts you? It's like, because we've had many conversations about it, and it's like a magnet that is pulling you deeper and deeper into itself.
I would say that a lot of scientists I know, I mean, that was my profession. I know a lot of scientists. By and large, I would imagine that they, at least in public, deny having any spiritual life at all. Many are atheists outright. They will tell you that. But I suspect that most people have some spiritual side to them, even if they don't talk about it. And in a professional context, of course, the focus is on science. I myself don't find a contradiction between my interest in physics and my fascination with the spiritual literature, especially from India, because I think that they have, each their own sphere. There was a time when natural forces like lightning or the sun or wind were mysterious to people. And at that time, spiritual tools were used to try and explain these. Certainly, we find that in the early Indian scriptures, even in the Mahabharata. They are mystified by many natural phenomena. Okay, over the centuries, we have made a lot of progress in understanding material phenomena. We understand what causes the wind, why the sun shines. We know something about the nature of stars, Earth, and so on. I am very happy to have contributed a little bit to some of that knowledge. I've learned a great deal, of course, in the process. But I believe that's only part of what we are capable of. And that this sort of material knowledge we get from physics or related sciences is only a part of a much broader set of questions that we all have. What is the purpose of life? I mean, life is a mystery. Death is another mystery. Birth is mysterious. It is miraculous. Where are we? How are we to live? What is right? What is wrong? We don't know. Or at least physics has nothing really to say about some of the most important questions. We have helped develop these amazing, terrible weapons, but I don't think we have the maturity to handle them.
Yes.
We are tormented by the complications that our own technology has created.
Yes.
And
You know,
where do we
you
go for this?
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, where do we go for this? I believe that the Gita and the Mahabharata give one set of answers to that. The answers are contradictory. They are stated in the language of mythology and poetry. They are not like laws of nature, which you can describe mathematically. There are no
Yes.
unique answers, but at least they give you a language and a framework in which to think about it. And
Uh,
that's,
you,
I think, what,
you,
yeah.
you and I have talked about this before that hard science can tell us a lot about the material world, and even a soft science or a human science like psychology can tell us how the mind works. But they can't answer the questions of what is the purpose of life? What is the meaning? How do I find truth? How do I find purpose? And even though some of these scriptures are kind of immersed in mythological language, it's really the religious literature of the world, the poetic language of these religions. From a different angle, they can open us up to mystery. They can open us up to meaning in a way that just, flat linear knowledge and information can't. It's like the great literature of the great literatures of the world, or spiritual literatures, open us up to a world of meaning that
Yeah,
that feed the soul. They don't always, they feed the soul. They feed the spirit inside of us.
exactly. Yeah, I think that in that sense, spiritual knowledge is as we are in as much need of it today as 2,000 or 5,000 years ago when the Bible or the Gita were written. I mean, we may have understood some things better about the material world, but I think that the people back then had quite sophisticated thoughts about the
Yes,
spiritual world,
yes,
and it is a mistake for us not to listen to it. Or it is a kind of hubris if we to think that
yes,
they were all idiots. And
yes,
because I hear this kind of thing often from people I know, and I think that that's a mistake. I think that okay, at the very least we must learn it. Maybe it's not all right, okay, but at least you must learn it, and
yes,
you must give it. Not all of it may be right. When people were at the time of Galileo, he was prosecuted for having the wrong thoughts about celestial
yes.
mechanics. So clearly, people can make mistakes, but still, it is important to listen to it and form your own opinion.
Yes.
the matter. So that's that, and I've come away from my studies with great respect for the philosophies of ancient. I mean, mostly I studied Indian literature, but even others. We are wrestling with many of the same problems. And one of the things I find remarkable about the Mahabharata, the epic of which the Gita is a part, is that it is very much alive. The society they describe is very different from our own, even from contemporary Indian society. In fact, I would actually argue that our society today is in some ways a lot better and a lot fairer
Okay.
and than the society they describe. It's less violent for sure. The life of the ordinary person is a lot better than it was.
Yes.
And so that is part of the material progress we have made, perhaps
Yes.
partly due to science. And yet, many of the issues they deal with us today, in fact, in some ways, it is worse today. A common theme, for example, many things, such as infertility. Many royal families in the saga have problems with having male heirs that can inherit a kingdom, and a lot of
Yes.
confusion, a lot of complications arise as a result. We still have some of those problems. We don't always. Uh, there are problems of succession, problems of jealousy, problems of competition, rivalry. Uh, then we have they did not at that time have particularly sophisticated weapons. They talk about bows and arrows, swords, elephants, horses, chariots, things like that. But in mythology, they imagined what would happen if they had more powerful weapons. And they caused enormous problems and enormous confusions. The more powerful the weapons you have access to, the greater the ethical dilemmas that would
Yes.
fall into. And they examined some of these things. And at that time, probably there was no reason to examine, there was no practical reason to examine it. They were asking them as questions of principle. But actually, now we are faced with exactly those dilemmas in the real world. What do you do if you have access to weapons that can destroy all life that we know of? And we are facing this now. So they ask those questions. What do you do with someone who commits an unspeakable atrocity? How do you punish them? What punishment do you give them? So these kind of issues arise in the Mahabharata, and no, they're not claiming that they have all the answers, but they give in a mythical and a poetic way. They describe the consequences of their actions.
Are
And
there any stories from the Mahabharata that you can share that capture
oh,
this
yeah,
tension?
yeah, there are quite a few, and I don't know which ones will come to my mind. There sometimes I go off on tangents.
No, you've been great. This is great.
Yeah.
So keep
So
going.
yeah, there is a character in the Mahabharata, not one of the most important ones, but a sort of a subsidiary character, the son of a teacher, who at the end of the war, he is on the losing side. He's one of the few remaining people left alive. Everybody has died on his side except pretty much him. And he just is despondent and enraged that everybody he knows was killed. And he lets loose a weapon that he had been taught by his father, who was a great scholar. And this weapon can destroy and annihilate the entire world.
Hmm.
And he does not, however, know how to withdraw this weapon. Once it is released, he doesn't know. His father knew how to release it, but the father died. The father didn't teach him how to withdraw the weapon. So he unleashed it out of rage. And this can destroy the entire world. And then Krishna, who is God incarnate, eventually had to step in and find a way to stop it, because he knew that this guy could not withdraw it. But he didn't stop there. He continued. He broke all the rules of war and of common decency, and snuck into the enemy camp and killed all the remaining princes who were alive. There were some of them were babies, infants. He killed them all. And he killed the woman who carried the last grandchild of that family that was alive in order to kill the baby that she was carrying. And then
Wow.
Krishna again had to step in and bring the baby back to life. And then he looked at him and he said, "What am I going to do with you? How can I punish you? I
Yes.
could kill you, but that's not enough. The things you have done are just beyond punishment I can think of. So I'm going to punish you by cursing you to immortality. You are going to live forever, and that is your punishment. You have to live with what you did until the end of the universe, which is in another 4 billion years. So this guy
Yes.
is still somewhere, supposedly wandering around, and he is wounded from the war. He has a wound on his forehead that is leaking blood, and he's alive somewhere still, supposedly. I mean, like this is the only punishment he could think of doing is to cancel out his evil acts and then punish him to immortality. So we all think that somehow immortality is a gift. We all want to prolong our life as much as possible. But here's a situation where immortality is a curse.
Yes.
This is,
Well, and it's a fascinating story, and you and I have talked about this story before. And again, power for the sake of power, particularly when it is motivated from anger, revenge, we unleash a force that we can't see all the ripples of destruction. So that's one piece. The second piece that jumps out is how we need the intervention of the guru, the avatar, a higher power, however you want to say it, to help us balance it. And then the other piece is just the whole notion of karma, that whatever we sow, we are going to reap. And
yeah,
it's not arbitrary. It's whatever we sow, we reap.
yeah, that brings me to another story, which is from the beginning of the epic.
Okay.
I mean, when I started to hear the actual epic, I found to my surprise that there are no good guys or bad guys. Like on the face of it, the war, there's a big war, and the losing side are the bad guys, and the winning side are the good guys. But there's a lot of nuance to that. Not even Krishna is an unblemished character. Krishna is God,
Okay. Okay.
but even he is, in fact, there are many situations where the Mahabharata, the story takes an anti-Krishna position. You know, So one of the things that really shocked me towards the beginning of the epic is when Krishna and Arjuna, the two main characters, collaborate together, work together to burn down a forest. There are animals that escape from the forest, which they catch and throw back into the fire. They burn it. So they have to fight the god of rain, who is also the king of all gods, who tries to put the fire out by raining on it. They have to collaborate with the god of fire, Agni, to burn the forest down. They're doing this in order to create a city, a capital city, and then build a palace on it, and so that Arjuna's older brother can be the king and can rule. And they do succeed in it. But while they're doing this, they are cursed by the king of the snakes who were living in the forest. And they said that for generations to come, your descendants have to pay for what you're doing. And indeed, many generations later, Arjuna's grandson was killed by one of the surviving snakes, biting
Oh,
him.
wow.
But it's more than that. They said a sage told them that this ecological crime you're committing is going to haunt all of your children for generations to come. And that city they built, which was the capital of the story of the country in the Mahabharata, is to this day the capital of India. And as we speak, Delhi is choking in smoke, and it is one of the most polluted cities in the world.
I have heard that. Yes.
Yeah, and so I wonder when I was hearing this, I thought, oh, here we are. The story isn't over yet. We are still
Yes.
praying for this. If there was a forest, that might help with committing it. But Delhi is now the second largest city in the world, and very soon it will overtake Tokyo and become the very largest city in the world. It has more than 35 million people, more than twice the size of New York City, or maybe
Wow.
3 times. But it doesn't have the resources to fight the smog that is created by all that. So this is the thing: is that the Mahabharata is an old story, but it is alive still. You can.
Well, that's the interesting thing about in my own background, Catholic Christian. We look at some of the stories, like the whole Genesis story, and we say, well, that's a myth. And it okay. But there's some template for human experience and human existence that it is uh, showing us, that it is revealing to us. So it's interesting that even if these stories are not strictly historical, they're still tapping into some archetypal pattern that will either serve us well or won't serve us well, that will injure us or bless us either way.
I mean, it is. It is. I don't take the story literally. It is myth.
Right.
It's allegory.
Yes.
I mean, maybe two people named Krishna and Arjuna did not set that fire, but
Right.
somebody did burn the forest down.
Yeah. Right.
And a city did arise in that place.
Yes.
And that city is central to India all these thousands of years later.
Right.
And it is a poetic way of describing the consequences of the actions
Yes.
of our fathers. I think that's the way I take it. I don't take
Well,
it.
and there's another piece of wisdom that you shared is that even on the surface, it looks like they're either good guys or bad guys, but it's much more nuanced. It's much more gray than that. And I just project that onto our present sort of political situation. Everything is so polarized, and
Yeah.
people are either all good or bad. Either they're demonized or deified, and our capacity to look at nuance and subtlety, we've lost that. But so again, one of the truths that I'm hearing from you that comes out of the Mahabharata again is this understanding that there's no generally speaking, there's no absolutely good or bad guys. That there's always these nuances, and that we all have something, some knowledge, some insight, some wisdom to give from our perspective if we're willing to listen to each other.
That's right. The Mahabharata, everybody has an opportunity to tell their side of the story.
Yes.
It's a long enough story that everybody has. And you find that even the people that you thought were the most evil have their own justification for what they do.
Yes.
And they have in their own eyes good reasons why they're doing this and why the other guys that they're fighting are in fact the bad people.
Yes.
Of course, this is also a warning. It means that when you are making self-justifications, you have to be aware that maybe you are not the good guy that you
Yes.
think you are. Like, even bad guys have their own justifications for it.
Yes.
And so how do you tell who are the good guys really and the bad guys? And one thing I notice is that the people who end up losing, who are normally thought of as the bad people, are the ones who are completely confident that what they are saying is the only way to look at something.
Say some more about that. I think that's a great insight. Can you say some more about that?
Yeah. So in fact, one of the sages that advised them say that, the real difference between good and evil is that the evil people are totally confident about what they're doing.
Yes.
While the good person is in fact not so confident and asks for advice and listens to advice. He may not follow it, he may not understand it, may not be ideal, but at least there is the ability or the opportunity to listen. And the ones who listen are, I mean, they don't say it explicitly, but the idea is that if you are totally confident, you should stop and wonder if that is in fact justified.
Yes.
It is that maybe you're not right. Maybe you should ask, and that's
Yeah. It's
one
kind
thing.
of like the what we would say in the West. And I'm going to use this. It's an unpopular word, but it's the sin of arrogance. It's the sin of
Yeah,
pride
yeah,
that I have all of the answers.
yeah,
I have absolute certainty. And a wise person once said this to me, that what we don't know is always much more important and bigger than what we do know. So having that some humility and not giving
yes.
into that pride of that we are omniscient and all knowing is really
It's sort of
important.
absolutism, or it's a
Yes.
dogmatic view.
Yes.
It's a sign. A danger sign is that, and if
Yes.
you fall yourself, if you find yourself falling into that, maybe you are right. It may turn out that you are right, but you shouldn't just assume that you are right.
Yes.
You should allow for the possibility that maybe there's another side to this.
Yes. And there's always something beyond the horizon of your understanding that you haven't encountered yet.
Exactly. So it's not a morality tale. In fact, I know it is a very complex story that has many dimensions to it. But they do try to sort of give you messages
Yes.
about, and I think this is one of the lessons. And the other is that a lot of that society is about fighting and defending your honor and dying a glorious death in battle. Yeah, there's a lot of that. But one of the things I notice is that in fact the people that I would consider as evil are exactly the ones who die an honorable death as great heroes in the battle. And
Yes.
the actual heroes of the story, in fact, die very sort of ignominious deaths. Krishna himself, for example, is clearly the most powerful and the most dangerous of all the, in terms of his abilities.
Yes.
And he's so powerful, being an incarnation of God, that he decided that he will not actually fight in the war.
Yes.
He will remain unarmed, except that he gave advice. But in the end, how did he die? He died a completely ignominious death. He was sitting on a tree. This is 30 years after the war. He's sitting in a tree, sort of listening to music. And then someone, a hunter, mistakes his foot for a bird, and he shoots
Yes.
an arrow at it, and he dies from that.
Yes.
This is for an epic that glorifies war so much. This is a completely ignominious death, and that's how Krishna dies, and
Well,
even for the others. Yeah,
what's the message in that? Because there's a real clear message.
yeah. I think that they are having second thoughts about all that value system. About they're saying that it was a society that glorified war and glorified conflict and pride in your manhood and so on. This is what they always. This is the dharma of a kshatriya, is to fight a war. Yeah,
Yes.
okay, that is all true. But the other guy may be the hero, maybe the one that is dying the glorious death. And I think they're saying in the end that maybe that isn't what matters. Maybe Krishna is a great man. He is God. He is divine. But it's not necessary to also have a glorious death.
Yes.
That doesn't add to his greatness.
Yes. That's good. So that leads me to, if I understand correctly, right before the Bhagavad Gita begins, there is this: the two different armies are squaring off, and Krishna is there, and I think it's fascinating. Can you kind of give that piece of the story?
Yeah. So Krishna in the beginning of the epic is a rather minor character. In fact, he first appears as a guest at a wedding, and he's not a king. All the important people there are kings of various countries. The emperor is there, the king of all kings is there, but he's not a king. He's not destitute either. He's a sort of rather small scale dairy farmer type person. But there's something about him. There's a charisma about him that people listen to him and they ask him for advice. And as the story progresses, he accumulates wealth, accumulates power, accumulates influence. He marries into richer and richer families. His sister marries Arjuna. And then so they become friends, brother-in-law. And by the time the war is brewing, Krishna is already the most respected among all the thousands of characters in the epic.
Wow.
The true sages know that he is an incarnation of God, but the regular humans, like Arjuna himself, thinks of him as a friend and a wise man, but not he doesn't know that he is God. He's uh, so both sides come to Krishna to ask for his help. By now, Krishna has accumulated a powerful army of his own. And so Krishna says, "Well, I know I like you both. I know that I should really be neutral with the two wars. So here's the deal I offer you. I have an army, quite a powerful army. I will give that to one side, and I will offer myself to the other side. But the condition is that I will not fight. I will be a non-combatant. I will give advice, but I will not actually take up arms. And I give the choice to Arjuna because he's the younger one. So his cousin, who is the enemy, is also there, and he's absolutely delighted by this choice because Arjuna did this idiotic thing by choosing Krishna himself. Now I have the army. So clearly, he comes out of it really pleased. He thinks that he has got the best possible deal.
Yes.
But of course, the point is that advice from a wise person is worth much more than an army.
Yes.
He doesn't understand that.
It's turning the values of the world upside down.
Yes.
It's so countercultural. Keep going. It's beautiful.
Yes. And then Arjuna, so Krishna offers to be, is a non-combatant. Krishna offers himself to be the chariot driver, kind of a chauffeur for Arjuna. And then I find out as I read the Mahabharata that there is a caste of people who are these drivers. They are of a lower caste. Arjuna is from the royal caste, but these are relatively low-level people. But throughout the epic, you run into these characters who are chariot drivers of various people, who are in fact very wise people. They tell you their job isn't just to drive the chariot. They are there to provide advice, strategic advice. They see things that the main warrior is not able to see because they have the time to look around. They tell stories. They give pep talks when things are going badly. They are the storytellers of that culture. The Mahabharata, as the entire epic, is a story within a story within a story, and the overall person who tells the entire story is, in fact, come from the caste of chariot drivers, because it was traditionally their job to tell the story of a war.
Yes.
Because they're right there, they see it all. But they are non-combatants. It is a war crime to attack a charioteer directly. But on the other hand, they are extremely brave people because they're right in the middle of all these weapons flying around. And in fact, quite a lot of them do die in the middle of war. So they're somewhat similar to war correspondents who be today.
Okay.
In the sense that they are witnesses to what's happening. So Krishna takes this rather low-level job as a chariot driver, and that's how he finds himself at the beginning of the war driving Arjuna's chariot. So, in fact, the beginning of the Gita, as you might remember, is when Arjuna orders Krishna to take the chariot, ride in front, stand in between the two armies, so I can have a good look of everyone on the other side. And he's really giving a command. Because that's how a warrior talks to to a chauffeur. He says,
Yes.
put the chariot in between. And then Arjuna stands there and he looks around, and then suddenly he sees all the people who are more dearest to him on the other side. He sees his own teacher, he sees his uncle, he sees his grandfather, all on the other side. And he realizes suddenly that he has to kill all these people in order to win this war. And Arjuna loses his composure. And he basically has a nervous breakdown. He falls apart. He says that, oh, I feel like the bow is slipping from my hand. The hair on my arms is standing up. I can't. I feel like my skin is on fire. And he starts to cry, and he drops the weapon, and he sits down. He puts his head in his hands, and he is completely despondent. And that is the beginning of the Gita. This is the first chapter of the Gita. Each chapter of the Gita is a different yoga or union. It's a different approach to becoming united.
Yes.
And the message of the first chapter is that one of the ways in which you discover spirituality is despondence.
Yes. Yes. I say this to people sometimes, and that nervous breakdowns are highly underrated forms of spiritual transformation.
I think that is the message of the first chapter.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because I've been there myself. It is only when you are completely lost that you turn to spirituality.
Yes.
But at least, for most people, ordinary people.
Yes.
I am of that type myself.
Well, I think that's true for virtually anyone on the spiritual path. And I think we hit different levels of despondency. We go deeper and deeper, and we realize, oh, there's another battle I have to face, and there's another threat. And so I think until we reach that highest level of consciousness, I think these are cycles that repeat, only at deeper and deeper levels.
And then, on the face of it, you may think that Gita is an exhortation to war, because essentially what Krishna does is to try and bring Arjuna out of his despondency. But I think it is more than that. The war is a metaphor for the struggles we all have in our life.
Yes.
And it is a horrendous war. I mean, the war is absolutely devastating. So they have taken the struggles we all face and then taken it to an extreme.
Yes.
You are put in the situation of having to commit atrocious acts in order to win this war. And it's sort of presaged by it's not only the Gita. The Mahabharata has several other books which are also spiritual texts. They're not as famous or as powerful as the Gita, but there are such things. So there is an earlier book like that called Vidira Nidhi at an earlier episode, where another wise character gives advice to the other side, but he's ignored. He's not.
Yes.
So in that he says something. It's a sort of strategic advice. He's saying that says that to save a life, you may have to chop off a limb. To save a family, you may have to kill an evil son. To save a village, you may have to kill a family. To save a country, you may have to destroy a village. And to save the earth, you may have to destroy a country.
Yes. Wow.
And so the person who's saying this is sort of the illegitimate uncle of the main cousin on the other side. And although everyone thinks he is wise, he doesn't really have the stature to speak directly.
Right.
So he wants him to understand that your death may be necessary to save the country. This is what he was saying.
Yes.
That the person who is seeking his advice is Arjuna's cousin. But that guy doesn't get the point, doesn't understand that that is the meaning of what he's saying. So
Yes.
he just kind of told him, "Who are you to give me this kind of advice? I'm asking you how I can win this war. I'm not asking you to tell me, whether I should win. That's not for you to tell me."
Yes.
And so eventually that man essentially defects. He leaves and switches over to the other side.
Mm.
And he essentially gives, so the one guy who could have given them good advice, they drive him out.
Right.
And so I see things like that happen today. I mean, not right this minute, but in our contemporary culture, you might remember that in the 1930s, a lot of my heroes, the great physicists, were German. But because they were Jewish, they were all driven out of the country. They had to run away with their lives.
Yes.
And they ended up coming to the US and they contributed to the war effort.
Yes.
And that is one of the things that led to victory on
Yes.
our side. So this is a part of human nature, not listening
Yes.
to people.
Yes.
Help you.
I want to jump ahead a little bit, and just, you and I had a recent conversation about the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, yes.
And two thoughts. If you could just kind of share briefly, it's a beautiful chapter. In fact, after we talked, I read it. I went home and read it again. I've read it many times, but I read it again. And again, I understood it at a whole deeper level even. It's just a marvelous chapter. So if you could say a little bit about that chapter, and then if you don't mind, what you're endeavoring to do with that chapter, because I think that's a wonderful spiritual practice. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I believe that the Gita is the climax of the Mahabharata.
Yes.
It is a long story. Perhaps it is the longest book in the world, I think, by some counts. It is the longest book in the world. So I haven't, so I'm in the process of going through it. It is in Sanskrit, and my Sanskrit is not good enough to read it in the original. Someday I hope to do it. So I'm listening to an excellent English translation by an Indian economist, Vivek Debroy. It is published by Penguin Books. And one of the good things about it is that Penguin has brought out an audio edition. So I'm listening to it rather than actually sit and read it. So I can go through this. I'm about halfway through, and in fact, I am right at the point where the war is about to start. In fact, about halfway through the Gita as part of this larger epic. And I think just as the Gita is the climax of the epic, within the Gita, of the 18 chapters of the Gita, the 11th chapter is the climax of the Gita itself. And it is the point when Krishna reveals his divine cosmic form to Arjuna. So by this point, Arjuna has understood that Krishna is an incarnation of God. He didn't know that for most of the story. He doesn't know that. There's a point in an earlier chapter, in the 4th chapter, when Arjuna says that I'm going to tell you truths that I originally taught to the sun god. And then it was passed on to your ancestor, but then it got forgotten. And then Arjuna is confused. He says, I know when you were born. You were born only a couple of years before me. How could you possibly teach something to the sun god? And Krishna tells him that I am not just your brother-in-law and your friend. The difference, both you and I have seen many lives before. The difference is that you don't remember them, and I do. And so that's. And so Arjuna starts to understand this. So then, in about the 10th chapter, Krishna gives more details. He says, "I am the light in the sun. I am the fragrance of the flower. I am the heat of the fire. I am the Vedas, the great encyclopedia of the origin. When you perform a sacrifice, these are Vedic sacrifices. I am the thing that you're sacrificing. I am the person doing the sacrifice. I am the object of the sacrifice. I am the fire. I am the butter that you're pouring into the fire. And slowly, Arjuna's understanding of the situation gets better. Uh, so then says, I believe what you're saying, but I don't really get it. I don't really understand it. Is there? Can you show me what you are, what your original form is, not a human form, which I already know? Is there a way that I can see it so I can understand what you're saying? And Krishna says, well, I'm going to, if I show you this, this is something that even the great saints are not able to see. They couldn't handle it. So they don't even see it. But I will give you a divine sight through which you can see my cosmic form. And then he switches, and then this is probably the most amazing poetry I've ever read. I can't even begin to do it justice. Oh, but like you said, you have to read it yourself. Uh, so it is describes Krishna's cosmic form in three different ways. It is described as Arjuna sees it, as Krishna himself describes it. And then there's a third person who's actually a charioteer, who is the witness to the whole story, who is explaining it. His name is Sanjaya. So Sanjaya. So it is described from a third point of view. So Krishna says, see me in my cosmic form. You see every shape you've ever seen in the world, every color that you've ever seen. That is all me. And then you see all the stars. You see all the planets. You see everything that has ever moved and everything that has never moved. That is all part of me. And then you see in me any weapon you have ever imagined, every smell you have ever smelled. That is all part of me. And then the story switches to Arjuna, and Arjuna is absolutely astounded by the vision in front of him. And he says things like, I see that you have no beginning, no middle, and no end. I see that you're in front of me, you're behind me, you're above me, you're below me. I see myself in you, and I see all of my relatives. I see all the people on the other side of the war, as well as everybody I know on this side. We are all part of you. And then that all the Vedic gods, the wars of the god of fire and the god of lightning and so on. I see all of that in you. And then he just kind of bows down and asks for a blessing, because I am. He sees how small he is in comparison to this. And then it switches to Sanjaya, this third person, and then he describes what he sees. And then it switches back to Krishna himself. And so it sort of goes back and forth. It's kind of a trilogue between the three characters. And at the end of it, there is no doubt left in Arjuna's mind that Krishna is God, and that this is a unique experience that no other human will ever have. So Arjuna is sort of standing in for all of us as our representative in this divine incarnation. So I would like to memorize this so that it has sort of become part of me. I'm not very good at memorizing it, but I would like to memorize that chapter, which is about 60 verses or so. It's fairly long. But as I suggested, I should probably just memorize a few key parts of it. And what I am planning to do is to sort of memorize a few essential parts. So one of the things I should say is that the Gita is a song. It is poetry, but it is also a song. You're supposed to sing it, I think. And especially this part, this 11th chapter, I believe, is especially musical. In addition to being great poetry, it's also very musical. By tradition, of course, we have a lot of songs that people sing at temples and so on. It's like hymns and so on. But the Gita itself is rarely sung as a song, except that I found there is a popular Hindi music director. He writes songs for Bollywood movies. So he has set the Gita to music, not the entire Gita, but some excerpts from it. So I've listened to the 11th chapter of the Gita as he has said it, and I think that that is what strikes in my mind when I think about the 11th chapter. I'm hearing that music. I'm not especially musically inclined. I can't sing myself. I'm probably even a little tone deaf, and
Me
yet,
too.
it speaks to me.
Well, and when you told me the other day that you were going to memorize the chapter, I thought of two things that Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda said. That first of all, that he says that in the Gita there's a high vibration. There's just an energy to it.
Yes,
Um, there's something that emanates from it,
yes,
and
yes,
and by memorizing it, particularly with a degree of devotion and wonder, I think it has the capacity to transform one's consciousness. I think it's a wonderful spiritual practice, actually, that you are endeavoring to do by memorizing it and then really making it a part of your, by doing that, you're making a part of it, you're making it a part of your being. Metaphorically, it kind of gets into your DNA.
yes. It kind of draws you in. It has this mystical power. I mean, I read it first maybe 50 years ago. And I'm not particularly a religious person, but from time to time, I've always come back to it. And each
Yes.
time I understand it in a different way and a little better. I must say that there were many times when I was very frustrated with the Gita because it doesn't speak, it seems very contradictory. The chapter on bhakti or devotion says that that is the way. And then the next chapter on jnana, on knowledge, says that is the way. And then there's a chapter on meditation says this is the best way, and so on. So I'm like, which is it? What am I supposed to believe? And
Well,
I
but
started to,
I think that's part of the wonder. If it's, I'm saying if I believe it's reflecting a divine consciousness, and you can't put that infinite consciousness into a particular box and say this is it and this is the only way. You can't.
exactly. I mean, it's like we are all different people, and even one person at different stages of life needs different things. So you cannot possibly just give one prescription
Yes,
for everyone because then it wouldn't be the deep spiritual text that it is. So
absolutely.
you have to come back to it, and each time you find something else, and each
Yes.
person at each time in their life finds something that you can connect with. And what is astounding to me is that it has that power. Like you look at it from different angles, and it makes sense from all of those angles, and it is able to draw you in, and I think it helps you
Yes.
despite your skepticism and despite your
Yes.
you
Well,
know
we'll move towards the closing. So let me ask you this: what would be any final advice or wisdom you would share about someone who was interested in the Mahabharata or the Bhagavad Gita? What would be a final message or encouragement that you would give them?
so one thing I would say is that the Gita, without question, is a spiritual text of India, but I don't think it is limited to India. I would say that everyone has something to gain from it, even if you are
Yes.
of a different religious and cultural tradition. There is something in it for everyone, and I think you should take a look at it. I don't think that you really need to be from India or be a Hindu and so on. First of all, we can all learn from each other's spiritual traditions.
Yes.
And from the Gita, I believe that it has it was not always the most important spiritual text of India. In fact, for about 1,000 years after it was written, it was only one of the, thought of as a minor text. But it's only in the last 1,000 years or so that it has systematically come to the front, and now it is the one that most people would read.
Yes.
There is something there, and I think you should look at it. And you don't really need to be a Hindu. You could be an atheist, and you could still read it, and it would. I think that you can still get something out of it.
Yeah, there is a Catholic priest. He died in the late '80s, Father B. Griffith, but he wrote a wonderful commentary on the Gita, and partly showing the underlying unity between the teachings of Jesus and the Gita, and where there were differences, he said they're not contradictions; they're complementary.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
And I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah.
We do have to close. I want to thank you for this enlightened conversation. And I look forward to having many more conversations with you. And thank you. I appreciate everything that you have shared. And your love of the Gita, your love of the Mahabharata has inspired me. So I thank you for that.
No, thank you. And I have learned a great deal by talking to you, and it has been a treasure for me to talk to you.
Good.
Thank you.
If you liked this video, please give it a like, send it on to a friend, subscribe to the YouTube station. Thank you, and blessings to everyone.